Hi, I'm Jackie Tufts,
And I'm Courtney Myers.
and today the lesson title is Battle of the Beaks. This is a lesson about survival of the fittest. This will be the first lesson in a series of 3 that we'll go over a few days. It'll take 1 day to complete this lesson. This will be a single science math class time, which would be about 45 minutes. The essential question to the unit that we'd be covering would be, what is survival of the fittest?
Our measurable goals are, when given a grade level science questions that support or that relate to the natural selection activity, students will support their answers to the questions using supportive reasoning at a rate of at least 80%. We are going to be giving half a point for the answer to the question themselves and then half a point for any supportive reasoning they give. Our next one will be when given the class data from the natural selection activity table, students will accurately create a line graph plotting points and connecting the points from the class data and correctly labeling the X and Y axes for 83%, which would be 5 out of the 6. We'll have a rubric for both of these measurable goals that will be attached to the worksheet when the students get that. So for our anticipatory set today, we're going to be doing a Kahoot over the survival of the fittest theory to see where the students stand. This is important because it's going to teach how the different species become extinct or survive based on their adaptations to the different things. It will also open the door for the next few days of our lessons.
After the Kahoot concludes, we're going to bring the class into a think, pair, share discussion. They're going to talk about why survival of the fittest is important for all living things. Then after the think, pair, share, we're going to have students kind of come together, and as a class, we're going to compile a class list of what students came up with in their lists. Kahoot is concluded. We're going to bring the class into a discussion of why survival of the fittest is important for all living things. Then we're going to do a think, pair, share activity. We're going to have students complete a list in about 3 minutes of what they believe is essential for survival. After the 3 minutes, we're going to come together as a class and we're going to produce a class list of student findings of what they believe is the most essential things for survival for all living things. And after that, we're going to begin our class activity. Okay, class, I'm going to come around and pass out the activity packets for today.
And I'm going to let you know why today's activity is so important. Survival of the fittest is an important theory to know because it teaches everyone that we need to learn to adapt to our surroundings and as well as our food sources, or we'll become extinct. And that is why it's such a big theory in evolution.
Okay, we now want you to get into groups of 4. Once you're in your groups, I want you to designate who is going to be group member number 1, group member number 2, group member number 3, and group member number 4. Once you've established who is what number, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and we'll come around and check in with you.
Okay, so I see all the thumbs are up. I'm going to go around and pass out the beaks that coincide with the numbers that you all chose. I'm not going to tell you which beak is which number just yet, but just know that we will be handing out tweezers, binder clips, clothespins, and forks as well. And those will be the beaks for this activity.
Okay, now that you have your activity packets, go ahead and read through the materials and the first procedure and then stop. Once you're finished reading, give us a thumbs up so we know that you're ready to go on.
Okay, class, we're going to come together in 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to read over the part 1 of the procedure real quick, and then after that you're going to be given 3 minutes to practice with your assigned beak. So follow along with me on your paper. So the first part is within the group, you're going to select your beak type, which we've already assigned you, because we didn't want anybody to have the upper hand if you've already done this assignment or activity before. Each student is going to be given a cup, which represents the bird's stomach. The cup must remain upright at all times, and you must hold the beak in one hand and the stomach in the other. You can only place the food in the stomach with your beak. You may only grab one piece of food at all times. Any cheaters will be eliminated, and you will no longer be able to participate in this activity. A certain type of food will be placed within your feeding area, and you will have 30 seconds to collect as much of that food as you can. Once the teacher says stop, you will need to empty out your stomach, count the contents, and record it in your first table. And this will be repeated until we have all of the different food sources done.
The teacher demonstration of collecting extra small beads for the birds. Ready, set, go.
Now we'll be doing a teacher demonstration of the small beads. Ready, set, go. As you can see, one of the beaks is struggling while the other is doing very well.
The teacher demonstration of the medium beads. Ready, set, go.
Great, now this is going to be our last demonstration for the large beads. Ready, set, go.
Oh no, Kitty.
Okay class, now pick one person in your group of 4 to come to the front and get the beads for this activity.
We're going to give you guys 3 minutes to practice with your beads once you have the beads in front of you. This is just going to be a way for you to get familiar with how to manipulate the bird beak.
Okay, so since we did a little bit of practice, we're going to start the first trial. We're going to start with extra small, and you're going to have 30 seconds to see how many of the beads you can get in your cup.
Okay class, now that we're finished with our first trial, we're going to have you take your beads and count the number of beads that your bird was able to collect. Once you've counted the number of beads that you have, you're going to log into your table how many beads you were able to collect in that trial.
We're going to be doing the same thing for the small, medium, and large beads, so keep in mind what we did on this first trial as we continue to the next one. Okay, so now that we have the first procedure done, we're going to have each group bring up their selected person with their group data, and we're going to add that all together. So all of the forks data will be added together, all of the tweezers, and etc. From that, we're going to have a class table that we'll fill out together, and we will make a line graph off of that. I will do the first line, and then from there on out, we will have the students help us. We're not going to show that in this video due to the length of that process, but it will help later in the lesson where the students will be graphing for themselves.
Class, together we're going to read over the directions for procedure 2. This one's going to go a little bit different, so listen closely. Most habitats have more than one kind of food available. This round, you will have different types of food to choose from. We're going to spread all of the beads onto the feeding circle. You will have 1 minute to feed. Once the teacher says stop, you need to empty out your stomach and count the pieces of food one at a time. You're going to copy your answers as well as your group members' data down as well into your second table for data.
Okay class, just a reminder, after we finish with trial 2, you personally are going to graph your data, so that'll just be what you collected with your beak for the extra small, the small, medium, and large beads, and you will make a line graph like the one that we did in class with just 1 line instead of 4.
A simulation of what students would do in procedure 2. All of the different beads are represented as a food source. So each student's going to take their beak that they were assigned in the beginning, and they're going to have 1 minute to try to collect as many beads or food as they can. Ready, set, go.
At the end of this activity, the students will then count how many of each different size beads they had. For example, I have 2 large, 1 medium, 2 small, and 3 extra small in my cup.
And for me, the binder clip, I only have 8 of the extra small. I wasn't able to get any of the other beads or food. So after procedure 2, we're going to have students go back, take a look at the data that they collected for themselves. They're next going to take the data from their table for the beads that they collected and construct their own graph based on the one that we did as a class earlier through our guided practice.
So what Jackie and I will be looking for will be that they have their axes properly labeled, which we already have in front of the class, so if they were paying attention earlier, that'll be very easy points for them, and that their points that they graphed on their individual graphs match what they charted on their paper. So if they said that they collected 4 large beads, that needs to be reflected in their graph. And as we said, we will have a rubric attached to their activity sheet that will reflect this.
Through this lesson, students, after they've finished constructing their graph based on the table data that they collected for the second procedure, they're then going to go through a series of 5 questions. They're going to discuss them with their table groups before answering them, and then they're going to kind of decide on what they want to write on their paper as far as their answer goes.
And we will be collecting that as kind of an exit ticket, and our grading will be based on if they answered the questions and if they have supportive detail in there. So an example of an answer could be, yes, I believe that my bird would collect the most big beads because I collected X amount of beads while the paperclip only collected this amount. So it's really just dependent on you as the student, but as long as they support and show that they know what they're talking about, they will get full credit. This lesson, we were assigned a student from another school who has a severe hearing impairment, and for that we had to differentiate a little bit within our lesson. A couple of things that we thought to do were tape the lesson so they could go back and look at it if they didn't hear certain things, for things that will be helpful in the future. We also talked about the teacher needing to be closer to the students so they can hear more, as well as eye contact is important with those students. Eye contact and being near is more probable of them hearing what is going on in the class than if the teacher is across the classroom and not looking at the student at all. In respect to that, with student comments, the teacher will reiterate what the students say so the student has more of a chance of hearing and understanding what's going on in the class. And they will have a partner or somebody that they're close and comfortable with during the activity that will give them a nudge or something when they're supposed to start the feeding process so they don't delayed or left out of that.
So as part of our adaptations, we've decided to incorporate technology for those students who might need it. As far as for the graphing aspect goes, there's Excel sheets that they could use, Word documents where they could construct a graph that way. So we're definitely going to incorporate technology for those students that need it, who maybe have some trouble with writing on pen and paper, so we'll have that for them. We also have aid for students struggling with English language. A lot of what we're doing could be translated for them prior or front-loaded before the lesson plan begins. And so that would really help kind of like adapt our lesson to some of the students that might need some extra help.
So for multisensory learning, we had a couple of different things that we included into this activity. We used Kahoot, which was technology. We're using the whiteboard or the overhead, whichever would be available in our classroom, for organization, and our graph.
For our auditory learners, we have oral directions being given and class discussions to kind of hone in on some of those students that learn better with discussion and through oral learning.
And for kinesthetic and tactile, we have hands-on activity with the handouts to write on. So it was a lot of getting their hands, not dirty, but in the beads.